Okay, with that, we're going to move on to agenda item 17, draft fiscal year 2021 predation management plan, wildlife staff specialist Pat Jackson for possible action. Draft fiscal year 2021 predation management plan will be presented to the Commission for initial review. Following this review, the plan will be updated and shared with the State Predatory Animal and Rodent Committee. Comments from the Park, County Advisory Boards to manage wildlife, any other interested entity will be compiled with the Wildlife Damage Management Committee for their consideration at March 2020. The Commission will receive an updated 2020 from the Wildlife Damage Management Committee and may additional direction at that time. Mr. Jackson.
Pat Jackson, Staff Specialist Record. Here to run through the first three presentations I give at the January, March, May meeting. So this is our first rendition. Fiscal year 2021 Predator Management Plan. Quick summary. It's kind of confusing with calendar years and fiscal years, so I have to give a reminder. The November meeting, I reported out on the fiscal year 2018 Predator report. We're currently functioning in fiscal year 2020, and I am presenting now again the first draft of Predator Management Plan for fiscal year 2021. And the previous existing plans and reports can be found on our webpage. Go to your favorite search engine and punch in NDOW Predator Management, pop up. Other quick rendition of the $3 fee. This most recent fiscal year, we had $117,000 generated. From that, $14,000 was for admin to the Department of Agriculture. The remainder is available for staff salary, predator plans, projects within the plan, and then if we don't spend it all, it goes into reserves and is available in the future year. It does not revert to a general account. With these funds, a little bit of change in the 2015 legislation. We get a $3 fee on the management of predatory wildlife, research for legal control techniques of predatory wildlife, and the sensitive species. We also have, as I'm sure you're aware, 80% mandate of those funds for the most recent year that we have active reporting to spend that on lethal removal, and we are allowed to use that percent. Part of that can be monitoring to measure the effects of that lethal removal. So looking at this budget detail from 2019, the most recent year that we do have accurate records, so just over $717,000. We have to spend almost $574,000 to reach the mandate, and I have $724,000 allocated in this plan to add all of that up. I'd like to note here, when I propose budgets to these projects, it's more of the spending than that is what we will spend. So it gives us a little bit of a to make decisions biologically. So the projects, if you read the Predator plan, you'll see we have three different types of projects. The first one is implementation. This is where we've had discussions with staff, area biologists, and used literature to go out, perform actions, use the $3 fee, and it includes both lethal and non-lethal management. Experimental management, we're still going out and we're doing something on the land. We're removing predators or trying to mitigate predators, but we're also trying to measure and affect. And then experimentation is where generally with outside collaborators to learn, understand more about predators and their management. And then we also define the monitoring, standard monitoring. Generally is looking at data that we didn't collect for the predator removal. So for instance, we are removing coyotes in Area 14, and we look at aerial survey data in part to look at that effect. Intermediate monitoring, again, we're going out and collecting some sort of data to come up with a level of inference, and then rigorous monitoring could probably refer to as a study and really trying to understand biology in some way or form. So the majority of the projects I'm going to bring forth are the same and unchanged. So projects recommended for continuation, greater raven removal, raven removal for protection of greater sage-grouse. This is an ongoing project where we work with wildlife services to lethally remove ravens under a depredation to us, Fish and Wildlife Service, to create temporary voids for greater sage-grouse before and during lecking and behavior. And this has a large budget. I can go into greater detail if you would like. Wildlife Services has been going through an EA. It should be done here in about a month, and in that it's released to the public. They do ask for a substantial increase in our depredation. The response variable identities in most of the projects. We have technicians that go out before and after wildlife services to look at change in raven densities, and the level of monitoring would be considered standard to intermediate. Project 21 is more intense raven removal in the Virginia mountains, collaboration with wildlife services and the USGS. That monitoring has it comes from a funding mechanism, $3 fee, but it's looking at the role of ravens and how that does or does not benefit sage-grouse. And so to measure that, look at either the net success and then also the brood survival. Another ongoing project, 22. This is removal of mountain lions in 1 and 3 for the protection of 2 different sheep populations. We use both wildlife services and a private contractor. A response variable. We're also using $1 fee to purchase and deploy GPS collars on these animals. We're looking at those mortalities as our response. A few years ago, in some various renditions of the plan, the commission requested on some of these projects that we have metrics on how these projects could either justify maintaining or evolving. This is working with area biologist Chris Hampson and staff specialist Mike Cox. We came up with one for sheep populations in both 011 and 013. We think that there are about 50 sheep in both 011 and 013, and so you can see, looking at this table, we're still going to proactively remove lines. When we get to 60-80, we would focus on lines that are only eating sheep, and then after 80, make a decision on a case-by-case basis. 2074, similar to the previous project, though a little further along. This is really monitoring bighorn sheep in 074 for mountain lion predation. We haven't had a predation event, at least of a marked animal, in a number of years now, and so we just put out some more GPS collars, and I think this is a pretty good success story for a project where we started out removing lions, determined we didn't think they were a limiting factor, used $3 fee to monitor that population, and maintain the ability to remove lions, and last year we issued a Rocky tag in 074 and hadn't in quite a while. And so the population dynamics here, we think the population somewhere between 30 and 40, and so you can see we're well above that threshold. We're going to remove a lion on a case-by-case basis. Project 37 is big game protection for mountain lions. We at times have isolated instances where we're worried about big game from an event project with mountain lions, and so this allows the department to remove lions promptly instead of starting a more formal project. A few years ago, I worked with staff and just came up with these indices looking at survival of young to adult ratios, etc. These don't indicate automatic predator removal, but what they do indicate is a deeper level conversation with both staff and the area biologist, say, and deeper dive into the data to say, do we have is predation a limiting factor? And so you can find that both for Project 37 and Project 38, about to discuss. This is a $75,000 project. We work with both wildlife services and private contractors to remove lions, predominantly for the protection of bighorn around the state. Project 38, very similar to 37, for This is predominantly used for coyote removal for the protection of pronghorn just before and during the season, and we work with area game biologists to look at pronghorn herds that we have some concerns about. Project 4, an ongoing multifaceted project that's out in Unit 144, is now expanded all 14. This started after some feral horse roundups, habitat improvement, LM, and then county funded predator control. We've also GPS marked some with these funds, which is our one of our response variables, and we've been surprised and impressed at the level of mountain lion induced mortality of those marked does, and so we're going to be having conversations with Eastern Region biologists and wildlife services, but this project in this upcoming year will be showing away some from coyote removal and focus a little more on mountain lions. Project 41, experimentation project I've talked about yet today, ongoing collaboration with the USGS, common raven experimentation. We're learning a whole slew of things about common ravens. I'd also like to point out, because this is not a lethal removal project, it qualifies for Pittman-Roberts funds, and 25% of the budget comes from the $3 fee. I threw this in here. A large part of this project is Argos backpack transmitters on ravens, and hopefully everyone can see this, but the two red polygons these are about 6 months of data. Two red polygons are breeding birds where we've documented that they're sitting on a nest, and you can see those home ravens are, whereas those large polygons from juveniles that as they fledged out of the nest we captured, they survived, and pretty impressive movements. 42 is assessing mountain lion harvest in Nevada. This is building an integrated population model. We're working with outside collaborators to look at our harvest statistics. Have a whole bunch of different GPS data from various researchers around the world. This is a plan for a few years now, and we're just now getting some movement. In fact, any day now, I'm going to have some preliminary findings and recommendations on what to do from there. So I'll be updating the commission as this moves on. 43 is the removal of meat predators, primarily for the benefit and protection of waterfowl in different management areas, Overton and Mason Valley, and that's a collaboration with wildlife services where just removing meat predators to benefit waterfowl during the nesting season. And response variables there would either be the number of females with clutches and the number of young with clutch. Project 44 is an example of an evolution of a project we started with the concern of a struggling sheep herd in our mountain. We removed some lions on Project 37, decided that it justified its own project, and then started calling a couple lions, found out that very few are actually eating sheep, but many are eating horses, and so now is also a collaboration with Utah State and the USGS looking at lions consuming sheep, and if and when they do, they're removed, but also the impacts that the horse ability has lion density in their diet. We're hoping that this evolves collaboration with the BLM, where they actually do a substantial horse roundup in the Delamars with an interest in it after a large part of their prey base disappears almost overnight. Project 45 is a collaboration with Michigan State, allowing the department to passively estimate black bears. Passive means that we don't need to physically capture, mark, recapture bears. That picture there, they have a series of trail cameras and snares across the western front, and fire rolled through areas at night. I thought that was a neat photo to include. This will be the last year for their field season, and so they don't need as much funding, so we've reduced this budget a little bit. But the goals are to estimate our black bear population through a density estimate, and then provide us with guidance on continue maintaining that model. So the goals: I'm going to have a more statewide population estimate. The one produced with UNR, accurate for a subset of where bears now exist in the state, and we would consider that level of monitoring rigorous. Also included photos. This started out, they were going to use hair snares. If you don't know what that is, kind of an angle of two strands of wire with an attracted in the center. A bear leaves hair on the barbed wire while it goes into that area, and then researchers come along, that hair, send it off, genetically identify that bear, and it's a genetic mark and recapture. They complemented that with cameras, and the cameras have now evolved to a more component to the model. The neat thing about cameras is they take pictures of and everything. So Michigan has processed from the last 2 years 1.4 million photos, and I asked for some of their better ones and some of the better bear photos. Also, just because I think it's neat, 2 years ago, the fire rolled through, and these bush cameras, I'm not getting a kick out of anything, but I just think that they continued collecting data so you can see before and after photos from those cameras. One new project, so I should be singular project, not projects. Project 6, investigating potential limiting factors impacting mule deer in northwest Nevada. We consider this experimentation. Qualifies for PR, so only 25% of that $60,000 budget would be $3 fee. Occur in the northwest part of the state, and what we propose to do is deploy camera grids to come up with relative density estimate of mountain lions, mule deer, but then also pronghorn, feral horses, and likely a number of other wildlife species on the landscape. Be a collaboration with an outside institution, probably Michigan. They are familiar with Nevada and have a ability to process millions of photos, and this would be a monitoring. Discussion with staff, biologists, and certainly from sports. The deer population in northwest Nevada has been struggling for some while, and so I define this as an analysis check engine light, and I'm coming to the commission with a project to figure out in greater depth what's going on, because at this time I don't know that I can just in a management action. So the known variables, what's going on the northwest corner, no one debates that tags have been going down and that mule deer have been declining. We have a lot of mountain lion in Asia, no lion harvest in California. It's the only spot in, so somewhat limited mountain lion harvest in Oregon, and then the Sheldon, and most likely lions moving in from the to the northwest corner. We also have pretty interesting evidence of lion numbers in the northwest part. I looked at our harvest data, and I think it was early 90s was the first lion harvested in the north corner, at least in the 011, 012, 013 through 015. I talked to my California counterpart, and he had a similar story from Modoc County, where California, way back in the day, some years offered a lion bounty. Only one bounty was ever paid in Modoc County. Their first livestock depredation issue in the early 90s, and now it's one of the counties with the some of the highest number of depredation issues, and we're obviously out of a pretty severe drought. And then there's also a number of horses in parts of the northwest corner. So where we hope to go from here, acknowledging that it's a large area, and some sort of term management is likely necessary. That would be very expensive. Going to either come back in a year to 3 years with either management recommendation, or we recommend also collecting these types of data to really figure out what's going on. All these credits go to Michigan State. I just wanted to show some neat trail cam photos. Again, I asked them for the best of the best. Trail cam are pretty good at capturing just about everything. Big indices on the landscape. I think that one's pretty cool. It's a raptor with some sort of insect. Also catches people during supposed to. And can anybody see the number of chuck in this photo? know the number, but I can tell you that. Here, I can go back and forth. So with that, I'll entertain any and all questions.
Mr. Johnson? Wait, do you have a question? Oh. Commissioner?
In regard to the new proposed project, you said you would be using population estimates and then trail cameras?
Yeah, Pat Jackson, staff specialist record. So we would not put trail cameras across all of Northwest Nevada, but working with staff and Chris Hampson, a game biologist, and an university, and existing GPS data on known colors and several other factors, put out a series of grids. And so traps on a grid system can capture photos, obviously on 360 days a year, day and night. And so that allows for what's known as an occupancy estimate. And so you can kind of see where animals are and how they can change throughout the year. And from that, you can have a density in it and then understand how many animals are in a certain area at a certain time of the year.
Commissioner Valentine?
Thank you. Mr. Jackson, would there be a possibility of Project 6 expanding to this east and southeastern portion of the state?
Yeah, I don't think that'd be a problem. Well, I'm sorry, what state?
Eastern and southeastern part of the state. Units 11 and 23.
I think that would be doable. Again, my initial opinion is going on in some areas is probably not drastically different than others, but we can certainly incorporate those into discussions on where exactly trail camera goods would go.
Vice Chair?
Thank you. Pat, Pat and I went on the phone today because I had some specific questions. I shared with him that very honestly, I think I'm finally absorbing a lot of this information. I'm not a biologist, but I like this. I think it's really good, and I think we had some conversation about why I feel it's good. But I think 46, I would love to see 46 expand. I know it's just part of it, so I would also like to see it expand in the future. But the question I do have is, do you feel like this is enough budget to do projects at the level that we should be doing them?
Pat Jackson, staff specialist. The short answer is yes. You know, there's always more questions that you could answer, or I'm sorry, ask. More money that you could anything, but I feel about what's proposed and the dollar amount attached to everything.
Okay. And if there was one project you really wanted to highlight, which one would it be?
So what do you mean by highlight?
Well, like, is there one you would love to expand or like to see more support for monetarily, financially?
I don't think I've ever thought about that.
Sorry. Threw that one out, Chuck. Okay, you can tell me later.
Sure.
I'm just curious.
Any of these projects could be more complex with funding, but if you look at wildlife management in the West, various states fund research and manage predator things, this is really an enormous pot of money, and I'm really fortunate to have this job and get to oversee that, and I think it's enough.
Additional comments? Commissioner Keel?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Comment along the lines of expanding this as well, not necessarily what you've given the limited, relatively small budget, but just giving you the flexibility in later years to move as you learn from the different areas of the states as well. I think there was a comment from the Persian king as well, and comments from the local biologists that it kind of the same thing for the 04 similar horse, mule deer, lion type fire issue as well. So I'm not sure if that's a framework you can work in or not, but.
Any additional comments?
Well, our discussion on the pygmy rabbit, I guess I'm just thinking, once again, like into programs, I believe they're used for sensitive species as well in looking at predation issues. And I guess my question to Pat and to Ms. Newmark, if there's sensitive species out there that might benefit from any type of new study that we haven't heard about.
List for the record. So Jen has been travel quite a bit. I've been trying to catch her in her office to discuss this project because again, the cameras capture everything, and that conversation hasn't happened. But there's a number of bare minimum presence. Oh, hey, we did not know that species in that part of the state. Not a sensitive species, but we certainly have confirmed reports of elk in the northwest corner of the state. Not the impetus for the project, but it would still provide a lot of information on that. So I would say, yes, there's certainly the potential in this newly proposed Project 46.
Jen Mark for the record, Wildlife Diversity Division Administrator. I think that we're always looking for opportunities to collaborate across our divisions and within the department. And so despite him looking for me for the last couple of weeks, we'll definitely be looking for opportunities. Trail cameras are really important for giving us distribution information, so there's some opportunity there.
So in regard to that proposed study, over time, it would be interesting to see if potentially, obviously, start documenting. It sounds like right now, what we're documenting has not been fully developed, correct? You're still kind of keeping it open. It's kind of more a discovery process at this time.
Yes, Pat Jackson, staff specialist for the. So I've certainly had initial conversations with Bob Montgomery, who I should have mentioned is intending on planning attending the May Commission meeting to present a lot of findings on that model. And so he has camera projects all over the world, different countries in Africa, inner city Cleveland, obviously here in Nevada. And we've bounced some ideas back and forth, but if this project is approved, I also have a proposal in for Heritage to fund some more work with cameras and whatnot. We then would have a dollar amount, would announce a sub-grant, including Michigan could apply, and that's a competitive process in the state. And then whoever's chosen for that work really have the fine detail. Okay, these are the funds we have. This is how we can spend them, and these would be the outside entity recommendations on cameras would go. So no, this is more of a 1,000-foot level concept with a few detailed conversation.
Definitely think we should post these to the Facebook site. They are very good photos.
Additional questions? If there's no further questions, I'm going to take public comment starting in Elko.
No comment in Elko.
Thank you. Public comment in Reno.
Yes, Steve Robinson, Washoe Cab. We would like to thank the department for proposing Project 46 to figure out what is happening to our deer herd in the Northwest. In the proposed project areas 2.2 is not listed as an area of interest, and we would like to add areas 2.2 to the project as the deer herd there is also struggling. Also, we do appreciate the study. We do hope that while it is being conducted, if there is an obvious cause of the decline, the department will act to reduce that factor quickly. The project is over in 2025. Thank you.
Rex Flowers speaking myself. On the new project 46, I would that you would add 022 to that project. At this time, we've lost almost 25% of our population within the last 5 years. Project 46 would be a 5-year study. If we continue down that road of the 5% loss, we will have lost 43% of our herds in 022 between 2014 and 2024. So I would hope you'd include 022 in there. I also hope move from a strictly experimental management into some form of implementation after a year's period of time to help get something on the ground. That is a factor for us sportsmen. 011 through 013 has suffered over the past 5 years a 42% loss deer population. 014 has suffered 59% herd loss in the last 5 years, and 033 has suffered 59% population loss on deer herds. Continue at these rates, after another 5 years, we'll end up at negative for deer. We would hope some implementation could be initiated within a year or so.
Any public comment?
No, that's it.
Public comment here in Las Vegas?
Joe Krim, Persian Cab. The project in the predation plan, but we would like to see Persian County into that project 6. I mean, already you're in Washoe County on one side and Humboldt on the other, right in the middle. We have one of the largest populations of horses and burros in the state, and we would like to see this project, at least a little bit of it, added into Persian County.
Okay. Thank you.
Dave Talaga for the County Cab. First, say that this predation plan is a source of great frustration when we discuss it at our cab meetings, and primarily due to the lack of data that we have available to us. I was very encouraged to hear Mr. Jackson's testimony about plans and what's going forward. Although I would disagree with him that he does not have enough money. So I would be very enthusiastic about coming across some more funds in order to address the issues that we have in the state. From the cab itself, we had a unanimous 6-0 vote to support the plan. However, we suggested every should be made as allocated funds so that there's no carry. Secondly, we believe that there should be some onward study initiated in several areas for mule deer, so we understand why recruitment is low. We appreciate the predation plan for mountain lions and coyotes. We are lacking data as to how effective that really is. And without that data, can we say that it's really so effective that it has to be 80% of the budget? So with that, we would just request that Mr. Jackson be given tools to collect the data that would be more available to us to study. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Myers?
Stephanie Myers for the record. It seems to me that it's time for you as a body, the Wildlife Commission, to press the Nevada legislature to be done with this $6 predator fee. And if not that, at least press them to withdraw 80% lethal mandate. It appears that the only animals or people who really benefit from these projects would be wildlife services. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Mr. Volz?
For the record, Volz, I'll simply echo Ms. Myers' comments. The commission should go to the legislature and fix this problem. It's a political creation 4 years ago and has not worked well. The money has not been spent well. It's not in wildlife's interests, and it's a poor use of tax money that you're extracting from your licensees. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Volz. Any public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring the commission. Pat, I guess one comment I have, a question about Project 46. If information we receive early on requires some implementation, I would I agreed back that projects 37, 38 would give you that flexibility while the predation management plan is in place.
Pat Jackson, specialist, that is accurate, yes. No, with projects 37, those are statewide.
The other question I have then is, it seems there is a lot of enthusiasm for Project 46. I share in that enthusiasm. My question is, can you work between now and the next meeting with the Wildlife Damage Management Committee prior to that presentation of this plan to this commission in March to see if that project can be expanded, how much additional funds would be needed to expand that into different areas of the state, or might that be sub-projects where 46 would be focused on North Nevada and do a separate project in another part of Southeast Nevada. It seems county can be part of 46, but can you evaluate that and report back on that in the next steps in March? Because given the public input and where we're at, it seems to me there's an appetite to increase the funds for that project and expand it.
Since staff specialist, yeah, I can absolutely do that.
Questions or comments further? This is an action. I don't know if we need to take any specific action, as the department will be taking input from today's meeting and then present it to the level and then on to the commission as Wildlife Damage Management Committee making recommendations or suggestions to us in March. I'll certainly entertain a motion necessary or if there's further comments. I don't see any. Mr. Jackson, I want to thank you for your work on this. I've said it past miles ahead of where we were when I was on the Lyon County cab and starting out on this commission, and when I was the Wildlife Damage Management Committee. So with that, I think we close that agenda item and move on to agenda item 18, as long as the department is clear on what we'd like to see in. With that, we'll move on to agenda item 18, Commission Regulations for Possible Action, Public Comment Allowed. Agenda item 18, Commission General Regulation 486, Veteran and Active Military Waterfowl Season, LCB file number R027-19. Management Analyst Kylie Taylor for possible action. The Commission will consider adopting a regulation to amend Chapter 503 Nevada Administrative Code. Federal statute was adopted in 2019, which, should a state desire, would allow for veterans and active military to exclusively hunt waterfowl for a period of 2 days within the maximum allowable days of the existing season. If adopted, this regulation would provide authority to the Nevada Board of Wildlife Commissioners to establish a season at some future point if they choose. The Commission held a workshop on September 20th, 2019, and a workshop on November 1st, 2019. The commission has requested the department bring regulation back for possible adoption. Ms.
Thank you, Chairman Johnson. As you stated, you have all heard regulations now at the previous two workshops. I'm just here to remind, should you choose to adopt this regulation, it does not mean set aside 2 days during the March season settings for waterfowl. It give you the authority to do so in the future should you choose to. And then I'm any questions.
Any questions? Okay, I don't see any questions. Public comment in Elko?
No comment in Elko.
Public comment in Reno?
No comment in Reno. Thank you, Johnson.
Thank you. Public comment here in Las Vegas? Seeing no public comment, I'll bring it back to the commission for any further discussion or a motion.
I move to approve General Reg 486 Veteran and Active Military Waterfowl Season.
Second. Okay, I have a motion by Vice Chair East, seconded by Commissioner Valentine to approve Commission General Regulation 486 Veteran and Active Military Waterfowl Season LCB file number 027-19. Everybody clear on the motion? Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. We can move on then to agenda item 18C, as 18B has been continued for later consideration once we see back from LCB. Commission Regulation 19-05 Amendment 1, 2019-2020 and 2021 big game seasons. Wildlife Staff Specialist Cody McKee for possible action. The Commission will consider amendments to 2020-2021 hunting season and dates for mule deer, pronghorn, antelope, elk, big sheep, and mountain, including limits, hunting hours, special hunt eligibility, animal sex, physical characteristics, and legal weapon requirements, boundary restrictions, and emergency depredation hunt structure and statewide quota. The Department amendments correct errors from last year, address emerging management needs, address substantial changes in wildlife abundance, or conflicts. Mr. McKee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Cody McKee, Staff Specialist for the record. As you mentioned, we were this year to try and address any errors, potentially identify areas where there's an management need. And what you will notice from department recommended amendments is those were very few this off-year seasons. So the two changes that we had recommended was to align our season dates for our shared antlered and antlerless elk hunts in 091. Those seasons have already been adopted by Utah, so we're just ensuring that that we're putting hunters at the same time as our neighbors to the east. And perhaps a more substantial change was to recommend the closure of all of our antlerless elk hunts. Those are referred to as tags. Essentially, those are tags that are tied to mule tags. If you've drawn a successfully deer tag in a unit where we offered these management hunts and there was quota available, hunters had the option to apply and potentially draw these tags. We're recommending the closure of these seasons for various reasons. One, as you may recall from our 2019 quota meeting, the status of our elk populations in the state are all either 90% of our herds either within or below the confines of our management objectives. So we've done a really good job of lowering what once elk populations that have been called bursting at the seams, kind of a more appropriate management level that has been agreed upon by members or a team of peers across industry and land agencies with the state. So what I want to kind of take you to, one of the issues that we see from the game division with these hunts, their overall effectiveness. And when we first proposed the hunts in 2014, we offered about 2,000 tags. Success at that time was 16%. In our regular antlerless elk hunts, success typically ranges around 30%, plus or minus maybe 5 to 10 points, depending on where those hunts occur and the timing of the hunts. Since 2014, we've offered various levels of tags ranging from about 2,000 down to this last year, just below 1,000. So the blue bars on our graph represent the total number of tags. That trend line that follows the tags, that's success rates from year. So since 2016, our tags have gone down for the management hunts, and again, that's an artifact of we just don't need them as much anymore. And then also success rates have followed that trend. So in 2018, we don't have all of our information in yet, hunters through the questionnaires, but we only had 78 cows as of 2 days ago that were harvested through the antlerless elk hunts. We offered about 1,000 tags, and success here it's showing about 8%. I apologize, that's a little bit misleading. Success-based tags that have been reported is about 10%. Still a very low number. We feel that if these seasons if the closure of these seasons is approved by the commission, that we can make up for that harvest to our other hunts. We can offer a few more tags to our cow hunters. Some of the other issues that people have that we've seen in these antlerless elk hunts, one, they're confusing to our hunters because they can apply for multiple antlerless elk hunts in a season of this management hunt, and they don't realize that we don't offer an order to the draw, or no order to our draw. And so they will draw a cow hunt in a completely different area of the state, while members of their party may actually draw this antlerless elk management hunt, and it's entirely on the draw number of their applications. And then there's some challenges with implementation on the back end of this hunt. The tag is tied to the successful drawing of the mule deer tag, and so you have various levels of business rules that have to be followed when we're trying to issue these tags, and there can be challenges in ensuring that we're appropriately issuing tags based on numbers, etc. So with that, we had the two changes, aligning season dates in 091, antler and antlerless hunts, and then also recommending the closure of these elk hunts. And again, we're recommending the closure of the hunts, not the elimination of the hunts off of the books. So if we need to go back to these hunts in the future, they will always be there and available for us if we have an emerging management need for our elk herds. With that, we recommend that the commission adopt these changes. With that, I'll take any questions.
Questions? Commissioner?
Cody, I didn't hear this. You said that we can offer hunts to make up for. What other hunts would we offer to make up for this? And I know people got cow elk this year, and they were super excited about it. Some women that this was their first, and they really enjoyed it. I agree with you about the management levels, but I'm curious about the
Yeah, Chairman East, thank you for the question. Cody McKee, for the record. What I was referring to was our ability to just add tags to the quota. And so in certain instances where we are losing harvest because we're eliminating or closing these hunts, we can tack a few extra tags onto the quota to make up for what may have been lost. And that way we're still meeting our harvest objectives for the unit itself. And just to go back to the comment about people loving to hunt cows in the state, and I've had conversations with other members here that are attending the meeting. We've done a really good job of making Nevadans cow elk hunters. And I wish we had the ability to offer more of those opportunities, but at this time, we're trying to provide as much opportunity as possible while also maintaining a quality elk hunting experience for everybody across the board, both for and antlerless elk hunts. And one thing that I did fail to mention, when we talk about opportunity, providing people with the chance to get out into the field, Nevadans, these antlerless elk management hunts didn't really do that. People already had a deer tag in hand. And so what we can do is we can actually get an elk tag into the hands of somebody that didn't already have that opportunity to go out and hunt.
Commissioner Barnes.
Cody, not really a question, kind of a comment kind of on some of the background to this. When these management hunts were put in, it was recognized by the department that something needed to be done. And when we went through all this, I wasn't on this board yet. I was still involved with the GAB, but I appreciated the fact that we made an effort to get the numbers down, and the agreement was at the time is that when the numbers were down, then we wouldn't need these, and that's exactly what's happening. Probably not 100% successful, but it worked, and just express appreciation for the department for doing it and sticking to the plan.
I go back to when this was first came about. The idea was to be able to get the elk numbers back to the desired man levels without putting so many people in the field that it detracted from the experience of cow owners, and putting in an elk tag as someone drew the deer tag. And so I concur that if we're back to the numbers we are, this makes sense, and address the management objectives through the issuance of cow tags itself. But this, before we get too far ahead of it, let's do comment in Elko.
No comment in Elko.
Public comment in Reno.
No comment in Reno.
Public comment here in Las Vegas. So I'll bring it back to the commission for any further discussion or a motion. Commissioner Barnes.
Mr. Chairman, I would adopt Commission Regulation 19-05, Amendment Number 1, 2021, Big Game Seasons as presented.
Okay, I believe you left out 2019 and 2020. That was part of this. If you look at the top of page 5 on the agenda.
Add it in.
What's that?
I will add it in.
Okay. Second for that. I just wanted to be clear, make sure the motion was clear. Any further discussion, question on the motion? Motion by Commissioner Barnes, seconded by Commissioner Allenberg. Approve Commission Regulation 19-05, Amendment Number 1, 2019, 2020, and 2020 games. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries 9-0. Okay, move on to agenda item 19D, Commission Regulation 19-12. Amendment Number 1, 2020 and 2020-2021, restricted non-resident guided deer seasons as Wildlife Staff Specialist Cody McKee for possible action. The Commission will consider amending 2020-2021 hunting seasons for restricted non-resident guided mule deer, including hunt boundary restrictions. Mr. McKee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Cody McKee, Staff Specialist for the record. There's not a lot to discuss here. I can explain the process by which these tag numbers are derived. Essentially, NAC or NRS states that we cannot exceed 60% of the total non-resident quota from last year. So that number was about 400 tags. That number would have been about 400 tags. The government's recommendation for non-resident guided quota for the upcoming season is 297, which is about a tag decline from last year for this particular. And the reason that decline occurred is because it's based off of 2019 non-resident quotas, and there was a decline in overall tags that were issued last year. So everything kind of tied at the hip. There's not a lot of latitude to make changes from this because of what's already established in our that it's based off of last year's quotas. I did talk to Staff Specialist Schroeder, and the numbers for each management area must not exceed 37.5% of last year's non-resident any legal weapon quotas. So they're fairly well tied to that number. Numbers can go down. If they go up, then we would potentially exceed that values.
Seeing no questions, and
No comment in Elko.
public comment in Reno,
No comment in.
public comment here in Las Vegas. Public comment, back to the commission for any further discussion or motion. Commissioner McNinch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll make to adopt Commission Regulation 9.2 numbered 1, 2019-2020 and 2020-2021 related non-resident mule deer seasons and quotas as proposed by the department.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner McNinch, seconded by Commissioner East. Is everyone clear on the motion? All those signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion 0. Would you all like to proceed with agenda item 19E on the black bear seasons, or break before we get into that? And I'm not saying the lunch break. I'm just saying break. Okay. Why don't we reconvene then at 11 o'clock? Please, everybody be in their seats to go at 11 so we can move the meeting along as quickly as possible. Thank you.